Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We're looking at Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man, getting right there toward the end. And back with us today, we have Nick Exposito from Fantasy Flix League. Hey, Nick.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back. Yay!
Thrilled to have you back to talk about this minute. We're getting right close to the end here on today's show. We're looking at minute 117. The minute starts with Tony telling Miss Potts that will be all. And it ends with Rhodey leaning into Tony to whisper something in his ear. So we're finishing up the last minute. It's the very beginning of this is kind of that callback to that line earlier that, will that be all, Mr. Stark? That will be all, Miss Potts, that we had earlier in the film. It's weird. It's weird how the delivery plays here because it is done in such a way where it's so different from the first time they deliver that back when she's finished changing the RT device in his chest that I didn't even recognize it as a callback with that line until I was reading it in the script. And I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. It's just the way that she doesn't quite finish it and he kind of delays it and everything. I love the way they deliver it here, but it's weird how it's not done in a way where it's like, hey, remember this from before? Did you guys notice it as a callback or did it kind of pass by you guys too?
Oh, it totally passed by me. I did not catch it until you started talking about it. I don't know why. I mean, I feel like I should have. But is it a callback that's actually played in subsequent movies between them?
No, I think it's just
become
here
a thing. And is it from the comic? It feels like a comic line, right? Is that, and that'll be all, you know?
Oh,
like
no, I just think
like
it's something cute that they wrote here. I don't recall that ever in the comics.
Okay.
But it still is done in a way where it's like, it's buried. Oh, did you notice it, Nick?
Yeah, to go back to the comics question, that's not really something that comes up there. But no, I didn't really notice it the first time until just now when you pointed it out, which is interesting.
I love the way it's delivered here, and I think your point is apt, Andy, that it's delivered in such a way and with such sort of an intimacy between them that it may be too subtle for me to get that it was a callback.
It shows also, they don't know where they're at in the relationship yet either. Like, there's definitely the tension, there's the dancing, the flirting, but then it's, she, in the previous scene, she delivers the stinger of like, oh yeah, you left me after trying to be all, sweet talky to him. And then this kind of like just has that tinge of like, well, okay, fine.
The subtext between the two of them is thick right now because even though she gets to be snarky here, you know that she's snarky with intent.
Yes, absolutely.
Snark with intent to romance.
And again, it's nice that we don't get that. I mean, this is really the last moment we have with Pepper in the film. We get to see her here. And then, very briefly, once Tony starts talking, we cut to her from behind as we see her watching Tony talk on the monitor and just kind of push past her into the screen. And that's it. That's the end of Pepper for the film. Do you guys feel like we wanted more of her? Should she have been in the room at the press conference, or is it fine just having her kind of standing there? And this is the goodbye to Pepper, the kind of the end of that moment. Is this, will that be all, Mr. Stark? That will be all, Miss Potts.
Yeah, I think it's fine because it kind of sets up and it leaves the relationship hanging. And I guess it's obviously they were planning something with this film, as you want, people have seen it, you see the stinger and all that. So I think it's good that they leave it where they do. So it's definitely in limbo. It's in question, and then it allows them to obviously flesh it out in subsequent films. So yeah, I think it's great where they leave it off.
I think it's great where they leave it off also because the next woman that we see with a central sort of spotlight on her is the one woman that he had a one night stand with right earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Like we talked about this sort of womanizing of the Wayne womanizing going on at Wayne Manor. Well, these are sort of the shackles that Tony Stark has shaken off through his relationship with Pepper. And I love that there's that sort of intimacy that he has with her. And then he comes back and and now we're in a sort of confrontation mode with this other, strong woman. from earlier in the film.
And the interplay there is also very good. It's very different from Pepper. Like, he's almost intimidated by Pepper, whereas this, there's I don't know what I'm kind of quite looking to say or how to describe it, but there's definitely like a more aggressiveness between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of, it's just interesting showing Tony is, again, two different people. The playboy, how he just maybe treats objects like women. Women like objects. That's a line from a movie somewhere.
That's a different type of movie.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway,
it's called Lucy by Luc Besson,
yes.
in which USB sticks are all women.
I love the difference in interplay between these two female characters and Tony.
Right. It's really good. You can. I almost feel like she is what we've seen with, this with her character as the reporter, the strong reporter, that she is actually, using sources like objects, kind of like, and I think that sort of confrontation where we see where she's come from and how she doesn't trust Tony because of who he is, and yet they ended up sort of using each other. I think this is a nice sort of callback to that, in that we see how their relationship has evolved and now is this relationship of confrontation. I think it's really nice.
When you go to the shot where Tony's kind of walking up to the podium, it's very interesting how she's framed. She's very front and center, standing out amongst all of the more darker toned suits, the blonde hair. It's definitely, it's setting up something there. It's like, oh, look at me. I'm here to, be angry with you, Tony Stark, for the way you treated me.
Well, and she's not moving, right? And I noticed that right away, that the entire press scrum here is a wash with movement, but she's standing out, and it again is that use of movement is one that she really highlights her position in the frame.
Yeah, she's very still. She's very, her coloring, everything is very designed to set her apart from everyone else, which is really nice. In this pool of the dark black and dark gray suits, she stands out in this really light gray suit with her striking blonde hair, just sitting there completely still. And it works really nicely to kind of set her as this person who really doesn't buy into the whole Tony Stark thing that everyone else buys into. This industrialist who's great and everybody kind of loves his swagger and laughs at his jokes, and she's clearly over that, and it's great. And she's always the one who's pushing him from the very beginning of the film when she's asking, what do you think of your nickname, the Merchant of Death? Mm-hmm. It's a great little thing that we see her, despite the relationship that the sexual relationship they have when he has her over. She still is the one, like when he goes to the fundraiser, and she's the one who confronts him about his weapons in Gulmira. And I love that she doesn't buy it. And she's here very specifically to kind of push him again. It works nicely. And I like that they keep bringing her back for that. Well, and looking at the reporters that we have, it's interesting. I was like scrubbing through the shots, looking at all the reporters, because we did have 4 very specific reporters back in the sit-in in the first press conference that we have in this film. And one of them actually speaks. He asks Tony, he's like, what happened to you over there? That was Ben Newmark, along with the other 3. I don't see them anywhere here. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't decide to let's have those back as well, to kind of call back that, these reporters keep coming to Tony. But I don't know. I guess I found it odd that of all the reporters, it makes sense that Christine is highlighted, but I'm surprised that those other 4 aren't highlighted as well. I don't know. Does that even faze you guys?
I didn't notice it. Yeah, right away. That was something that, but that is an interesting callback, because I guess you kind of, or if they did have a callback there, I guess, because they could kind of keep some interesting continuity in the little mini press universe of the Marvel Cinematic.
The MCPU.
Yeah.
Who are these press agents? I want to know.
Well, I just get the feeling like when we're looking at these, like we need her to stand out a lot, right? We need her to be the central point of attention in the press pool. And I think if you put any other familiar faces in there, does that serve as a distraction?
Well, and I guess that, that's a good point, especially in the financial sense. If you're really wanting her to be the one who stands out, do you want to pay actors who are SAG actors, or do you just want to pay background talent? To that end, I can see why it probably just makes more sense to not go that route.
Well, and let me just say this. The guy sitting immediately behind her should be double because he's amazing.
He's so into it, too.
He is
deeply into it. I bet he learned shorthand for this role.
He takes furious notes. Some of these other people just have their tape recorders up. He is just scribbling away, and it's great. And he's just very, like, those eyebrows are moving up and down. Like he's full on into this. He's fantastic. I was hoping I could figure out who he was, but he seems to be one of the uncredited extras who's not on IMDb. Sadly, because he needs notice.
What about the guy next to her left? He's a stoic. He is another one who's so focused on Tony and very concerned.
Well, and he doesn't, he's not taking notes or anything. Like some of these people, I feel like they're extras, and I'm like, I get it, you're press, but you should be taking notes or at least have a recorder. And it's strange to me that he's doing nothing. He's just sitting there, hands folded, listening with that very kind of concerned look on his face.
Well, and to that point, the guy next to him he's there only really to I guess, emotionally cheer on her and her questions. He also is not writing anything down. Yeah. Why do they put in this front row two guys who are front row reporters with no means of recording or writing down anything that is said in this press pool? They are useless to their affiliates. Please,
they might be John Favreau's golf buddies or something.
Right? Yeah, right. Or one's his doctor.
Right, exactly.
It's just like, oh, don't worry, I'll put you in there.
That's my proctologist. He's great.
But going back to the scene, I think it really does. Andy and Pete, you both said, having her on the corner dressed differently, it really emphasizes her because she's also in the second film. So she has some kind of continuity to carry over, and it highlights her importance to this, at least at this particular time, to the Iron Man story. Like has another part to play where she hasn't gone or won't go anywhere.
Right. And that's actually nice. I like that she does end up getting to come back and we get more of her, which will be fun to talk about in a couple years. It's a great moment that we have, just this whole thing with him. It's actually really funny the way that he kind of starts his speech, and he has that joke that he has right at the start. I'm going to stick with cards this time. He does it. He seems appropriately awkward, he seems used to being in front of the press all the time, but he also seems like, I embarrassed myself last time. I've got to try to do what they're telling me this time.
And he's very combative, especially with her at the very beginning when they start talking.
Oh, that look that he gives her. I know it's confusing. Yeah. Oh, he is just so belittling right there.
He's so mad, and he conveys so much just annoyance in that face. It's so awesome. It's so good. It just, again, leads to how much they really, nailed and got, getting Robert Downey Jr. to play this part was just a stroke of genius.
Oh, he's so good here. And just all the stuff. It's such a great, the way that he plays all of this. I know it's confusing, and all this, and it's just like, never, calling me a superhero. I never said you were a superhero. The way she throws that back at him is
so and when he turns around and says that would be crazy and
outlandish and
exhausting and fantastic. Her look back to him is so subtle and such daggers. They're just great. This interplay is so perfect.
Yeah, his eye movement throughout this scene, he's just, obviously the way he's playing it is like he is just, I'm composing myself. I'm trying to stay straight here. I don't want to say what I want to say, which he ends up saying. It's perfect.
Well, and I think that it speaks to what we think of as heroes and kind of what we've been saying in the last couple episodes, this whole idea of who is a superhero. And it's this ironic character that we have here in Tony Stark as our hero is kind of different for us. And he says, I'm just not the hero type. Clearly, with this laundry list of character defects, all the mistakes I've made, largely public, it's nice to say this is a guy who's he's a billionaire, he's this playboy, he's this genius and all this sort of stuff, but there's a lot of things that seem very human about him, and I think that helps us connect with him. And I think I don't know. I feel like that it's something that we haven't seen in these heroes before, where we're like, oh, I totally can see myself in Tony Stark, even if I'm not that genius inventor and all that sort of stuff.
This just speaks to Marvel, all of their characters, and that's what I love about Marvel, comics in general, is that they have gone out of their way to create these characters that all have real human flaws and are super, super relatable. I think that's what makes Marvel Comics, and again, all of these characters in this universe, resonate with people so much more than, the other guys.
I think that's one of the most interesting strategies that they went with. I mean, we've talked a number of times in this particular series about, how weird it is that they chose to start with Iron Man for so many reasons, right? But this is one that I think is most compelling, that he is the character whom at the end of the movie represents something different than every other superhero movie out there. And he's setting it up in this minute, and the T home in the next minute, I think is why this movie stands out different than DC, different than all of the Sony takes on superheroes leading up to this point. It makes this character unique. It's terrific. I'm speaking prematurely here, so I'm having to rein myself in because I also haven't seen the last minute of the movie.
Right.
I know. Yeah, because we kind of go right up to him talking about his mistakes. That's and then of course, Rhodey, because Tony is at this point where he's just he's been going off on this tangent. He started saying, "I'm going to just look at my cards," and then of course he doesn't. And this is kind of our last little moment with Rhodey. We'll have a little bit in the next minute, but Rhodey, he kind of, as the guy who's kind of managing Tony, we see Terrence Howard standing there, and he kind of, it looks like he's kind of, being as stoic as he can, but just kind of realizing it's derailing. And he kind of does his thing. He's just like, I better lean over here. And that's where we end the minute as he starts leaning in to say something to Tony. Maybe give him a kiss on the cheek. Who knows? What is he going to do?
Yeah, time to get out of here. Cliffhanger. That's funny.
Do you guys have anything else for this minute, or should we push onward? We've got a big minute next time.
I'm ready. Let's do it. I don't even know. What do we do after this with our days?
It's going to be fun. Lots of words.
Lots and lots of words.
Oh, I guess I'll save that. I wanted to talk about the script and the way that this scene is scripted, but I think we will save that for next time. But I will say, the one thing actually I will say is that we cut into this scene with Rhodey mid-speech in front of the reporters. And I have a feeling that they filmed all of this. And I think that this is what Rhodey was saying on the TV when we had our conversation with Agent Coulson last week in the last few minutes. Rhodey was saying, I can confirm that a series of military test prototypes were involved in the incident at Stark Industries last night. I can also confirm that there was, for a brief time, the danger of an arc reactor incident, which was rectified without injury to the public, and all power outages have been restored. Here now to answer a few brief questions is Tony Stark. And then, so that's kind of the lead-in that Rhodey had. So now we know.
I guess there's one thing that is interesting because, she calls him a superhero and or however that, that plays out. He's like, oh, I never said the word superhero. I wonder if in this universe, if they already knew, or maybe they retconned later on that superhero means something different. Like, because in the timeline, Captain America had already happened and was pretty famous,
Famous but gone.
Yes, famous but gone. So I'm wondering if when they say superhero, it's like, well, I never said I was a superhero, as in relating to someone like a Captain America. I might be reading way too much into it or skipping too far ahead in these minutes, but it's just something that I kind of thought about after rewatching the scene.
Well, and what's interesting about that, like famous but gone, but certainly not in Tony Stark's lab, and certainly not in Tony Stark's family history. Like clearly there is some awareness of the lore of, Captain America, even though we haven't seen him in a while because his tech is peppered throughout this movie.
Right.
Do you think Tony knew much about that, or do you think his dad kept it silent? I mean, I know we had the shield chunk that was laying in his workshop, but do you think Tony knew much about what that actually was and all of the story of Captain America?
I wonder if he knew,
or do you think his dad kept it pretty secret?
Well, it's interesting because why do shield agents show up? I know they got the because of the arc reactor and all that. Are they keeping an eye on Tony? Are they aware that maybe he has something? I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Well, because I mean, Tony acts like he's never heard of S.H.I.E.L.D. before, and his dad, was a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so, how did that unfold? And so it makes me wonder, like, because you have stories, and I don't know because my family's not in any sort of covert things, at least that they've told me. But that's the whole thing, is like when your family or when anyone is involved in some sort of covert government organization, there's a cover story. You may not ever know that there's actually a whole secret side to them. So I wonder if Howard Stark was always like, the military manufacturer, but the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. thing was kind of this covert thing that even his family didn't necessarily know about.
Yeah.
Dad works for the government, right? That can be like all he knew. It could very well be. Right. I think it still opens the door to what is that weird icon of a S.H.I.E.L.D. doing in his lab.
Right.
I just have a feeling that he knows, more.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Well, Nick, would you like to remind everybody where they can find you out there online?
Absolutely. Everyone who is listening, you can find me at and the rest of my crew on fantasyflixleague.com. That's Flix spelled with Flix. To describe what it has been likened to fantasy football, but for indoor kids. So you can go on and create a league and invite your friends to play within that league. And what they do is they can draft films to add to their team, and they compete by earning points through their box office take or their Metacritic rating, and you can trade these teams back and forth throughout the season, and it's completely free. Go online, check it out. There's a video tutorial if I explained it horribly. It should get you all set up.
What I love about it is the irony of indoor kids playing fantasy football. I am an indoor kid and I have no idea how to do this. So you spent a few minutes after we recorded yesterday's show explaining it to me. And I'm very excited to say that I've started our own league and we're going to start playing this and encourage others to jump in and play along with us. So it's the grand experiment. This is what we're going to do with our time once we finish this show.
A lot of deep diving, a lot of numbers. So, and we also have a podcast ourselves. We're on all the major platforms. Just look for the Fantasy Flix League podcast. Listen to us. It's a weekly show. We break down the box office. We also talk about coming attractions and sort of predict how well movies will do. So if you're looking for films out there and maybe want to trade or drop something, we kind of analyze it that way as well.
Super cool.
Awesome.
Well, everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord and chat room, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at thenextreel.com/Patreon. Until next time, true believers.